The Kibler log cabin. So the Kibler cabin is one of the most unique structures we've ever been involved in. And we'll go in closer to show some of the things about it that make it so different and a mystery as to how it was built. It's a lot more complex than just a log cabin. Let's go closer. So here's what we know. This land was first granted in the 1750s. John Kibler did not purchase it until 1804. So the mystery of this place is that it has elements that predate 1804, yet we believe there was no structure here before that. So I want to go around and show the outside of the cabin and show some of the elements that make it really unique. All these boards, strap hinges. These windows here are not the original windows, they were replaced, but the original windows looked something like this. But all these shutters and everything indicate 1804 or earlier, and they all have hand-wrought nails. Here's the thing that makes it so confusing. Notice the framework, all this is framed, yet it is supporting logs above on the second floor. So here we are on the end of the house. The chimney was on the other side, but this really shows the framing that is so unusual in that here's the framing. This clapboard I left on, it has beadboard with the old nails, but then look how the framing holds up this log cabin. Now many people would look at that and say, oh, well, they took out the logs. But the fact of the matter is, it appears this framing was all done at the same time that log part at the top was done. So the big question is, why did they put framing underneath and put logs on top? But let's go to the other side and you'll see how it's different. So here's the other side of the cabin. And note over here, it's logs on the full 2 stories. Here's another thing we see over here. This is a fireplace, the opening for a fireplace, and when we go inside, we'll see there was a mantle here. But look at where there was framing. All of this was original framing for an old hearth cooking, when it was just a cabin, and this was for hearth cooking here. Huge walk-in firebox. Notice these logs are different than the logs up there. These are round saddle notch, very fat and round, but up above, they're very narrow, sharp. So my personal theory is, taking into account that John Kibler purchased this in 1804, there were elements of this cabin that predate 1804, I believe, and there are also evidence to believe that there was nothing on this property when he got it in 1804. My theory is that John Kibler salvaged another cabin somewhere else. Was it his grandfather's? His grandfather was the immigrant in the 1750s. Was it his father's? That's something we'll never know. But I believe this cabin he salvaged and moved here. But then there's still questions that we have to deal with in other areas. Let's go inside. All right, so here we are inside the cabin, and it's a typical cabin that was built around 1804, the way the layout is, with a large room and a small room with a tight stair going up to a loft. Well, let me show you around and get to the firebox. All this woodwork, all of this appear to date to pre-1804, if not right at that time period. And all the trim is here, but then look at this, where this off color is. This has never been painted like it was here, and at this location, you can see the shell marks where it used to be a corner cupboard. Now, but that corner cupboard was here, and this is where the size of the original firebox, the hearth chimney, where they would go in and cook when it was a little log cabin. This mantle, we believe, dates to the 1830s. Our theory is it was in the 1830s when that old firebox was taken out, the old chimney was taken out, this was put in, and this mantel was put in, and this was just a regular fireplace to heat the place. It wasn't used to cook off of necessarily, which means they have more wealth in the family. They probably had a separate building set up as a kitchen, and this was used more as a formal parlor. So then as we go around, there are signs that there was also shelving over here. Not sure it was the same type of corner cupboard or not, but there was some shelving here. This plywood is covering up where termites had destroyed some of this area, so this was why this is here. This frame is a door. However, this door was put in after the 1900s and the early 20th century by the African American tenants who lived in it later. This was originally a window in the cabin. And there are logs on the other side here going all the way to here, logs. But then there are no logs here. This is part of the framing that holds up the second floor where the log cabin is. And what's unusual, when we took off, all these boards here were destroyed by termites. And when we took it off, we had the forensics team from Roots and Recall with us. Inside the wall that had not been opened since 1804, we found this wonderful tool that was stuck inside a hole inside this beam. This is either some sort of gauge for making sure beams were aligned when you put in the pegs, or it was just a handle to carry logs. You stick it in a hole in the log and you carry it. And that's what we believe it was. One of those two, but whoever was the fellow who did it, he decided to leave it as an artifact and board it in, and we found that. So that was really cool. Back around, and we get to what was the original back door. What right here that you see used to be an open porch. This was also walled in the early 20th century. But this door is wonderful in that it is original to the cabin, all handmade with the strap hinges. And what we think is so cute is they had a little kitty cat door at the bottom. Right there. Now the walls go on and they're all identical from around the room, but then we come to this wall. And we have determined this wall was added after this. This is secondary. Let's go in this side room, we'll show more about that. All right, here we are in the small anteroom next to the original parlor. And we have another door here, but this one's different than the front and back doors. They have strap hinges. These have the old colonial L-shaped hinges on them. And our theory is this door was one of the original cabin doors. And when they built this wall, which was a second generation wall, they took those original doors off the front and used them inside the house. And then they were replaced by a more updated door with a stronger, heavier hinge. This door actually went to the back, and we have it sitting here because the pins came out. So in a nutshell, all of this staircase and this framing was added after 1804, or was all this predating 1804 and this was built in 1804? All right, so I'm coming up the loft stair into, it's a true loft. It wasn't a full floor. The rafters start on the walls here, and then they have tie beams across, and all this was boarded in. But what year was all this done? Well, the clue is this wonderful pattern. If you see the wallpaper, look at this. It covers this whole wall. And if you come over here closer, we can see the pattern really well. It was a pineapple pattern. And through research, and our friends at Adelphia Wallpaper Company, historic wallpaper company in New York, we found the exact pattern of what it was. So imagine all this room in this bright colored wallpaper. It was actually an extraordinary room. And it's interesting that this was put in the upstairs. So this was actually a more formal room than the downstairs. The other elements that show that is in the chair rail and faux wainscoting that was put in. Here's painted blue and red as if it was wainscoted panels up here. So what is the date of all of this? We believe this wallpaper was printed in the 1830s. What that means is, since John died in the late 1820s, his son William took over in the 1830s, we believe John built all this into the second floor and made it a more formal room. Now, what the room was used later, after in the early 20th century, all these hangers, it was used to smoke hams. We have grease on the ceilings, it was salt damage on the floors. All of these, after it was a house, was used as a smokehouse up here. So here's some interesting things over here too. We know these windows were original with the cabin because they had pegs, how the plates are tied into the logs. However, then here are these strange windows were put in, which are long. These were done, we believe, in the 1850s. That would be around the time after William died and his young son, 16-year-old David Augustus, came in and started living here when he inherited it from his father. The other conundrum is right here. Now, we have the stairs here, but there are signs that there were stairs here. You can see in the boards where they filled in the old stairwell. But downstairs, there is no sign or evidence that there was a stairwell coming in, which would mean this predates the vertical boards downstairs. It's really exciting to be able to unpeel the layers of these places that become neglected and seemingly forgotten. Places like this have amazing stories to tell. They don't have to be log cabins for that to happen. This place has a complex history all the way from when John Kibler built it, ended up with 400 acres and 11 slaves, to his grandson, 16-year-old David Kibler, who before he was 18 years old had inherited the house and then immediately went off to the Confederacy, and they lost everything. The enslaved people on the plantation won their freedom, and those descendants lived in this house in the 1950s and 60s. The Counts, Mr. Cora Counts, lived here. And the trailers and houses that are surrounding the place are all descendants of Mr. Cora Counts. When the family who owned all this property descended from John Kibler, sold off these lots to the descendants of the black tenant farmers who worked this land. The house is only on 0.2 acres, and unfortunately we have to move it. We appreciate the financial support of Marshall Kibler's family, direct descendants from John Kibler, who helped us step in and purchase it, as well as other donors who have helped carry the cost of maintaining this place until we move it. But this is the year we're going to move it. Thank you for taking the time of our little tour of David Kibler's place. Please read the comments below to help support our efforts on doing this property, on saving this property. So until next time, place, purpose, preservation. Take care.